The bullet tore through Diana Thorne's shoulder, just as the sun began its descent behind the jagged peaks of the boys' mountains. And she knew in that moment that everything she had fought for might slip through her fingers like water through a sieve. She had been standing on her front porch, rifle raised, facing down 3 men who claimed her land belonged to someone named Garrett Hutchins, a name she had never heard before moving to Idaho Territory 3 years ago. The pain exploded through her body like white fire, spinning her backward against the wooden planks of the house her father had built with his own 2 hands before consumption took him last winter. Her mother had died bringing Diana into this world 24 years ago, leaving her father to raise her alone on this unforgiving stretch of land outside Boise. Now, both her parents were gone, and she would be damned if she let anyone take what remained of their legacy. The 3 men scattered when return fire came from somewhere beyond the tree line, their horses kicking up dust as they retreated. Diana pressed her hand against the wound, feeling warm blood seep between her fingers. The world tilted sideways and she heard boots hitting the ground running toward her. She tried to focus her eyes, tried to raise her rifle again, but her arms would not obey. "Easy now," a deep voice said, and strong hands caught her before she could fall. "I have got you." Diana blinked up at the face that swam into view above her. A man in his late 20s with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of Wyoming sage stared down at her with an intensity that cut through the fog, threatening to pull her under. A dark hat shaded his face, and she could see the shadow of several days' worth of beard along his jaw. "Get off my property," she managed to say, though the words came out weak and breathless. "Not a chance, madam," he said, already tearing a strip from his own shirt. "You have been shot, and those men might come back. We need to get you to town to a doctor." "I can handle myself," Diana insisted, even as darkness crept in at the edges of her vision. "I can see that," the stranger said, and there was something almost like admiration in his voice. "But even the toughest rancher cannot stop bleeding by sheer will alone. My name is Zachary Everett, and I am going to help you whether you like it or not." He pressed the cloth firmly against her shoulder, and Diana gasped at the pressure. The pain brought a moment of clarity, and she looked into his eyes again, searching for any sign of deception. She had learned to be cautious in this territory, especially after her father died and left her alone. Single women with land were targets for all manner of schemes and violence. "Those men," she said. "They said this land belongs to someone else." "They were lying," Zachary said flatly. "I have been tracking them for 3 days. They work for a man who has been trying to grab up property all through this valley, using fear and violence to drive people off their claims. Your land is yours, legally and fairly. Now stop talking and let me get you on my horse." Before Diana could protest further, he scooped her up in his arms as though she weighed nothing at all. The world spun, and she had to close her eyes against the nausea that rose in her throat. She felt him moving quickly, heard the sound of a horse shifting its weight, and then she was being lifted into a saddle. The movement sent fresh waves of agony through her shoulder, and she bit her lip to keep from crying out. Zachary swung up behind her, one arm wrapping around her waist to hold her steady while his other hand pressed the cloth firmly against her wound. "Keep pressure here," he said, guiding her own hand to hold the makeshift bandage. "Can you do that?" "Yes," Diana said through gritted teeth. The horse started moving, and every jolt sent fire through her body. She could feel Zachary's chest against her back, solid and warm, his arm around her like an iron band keeping her from sliding off the saddle. His hand covered hers, pressing down on the wound, and she could feel the steady rhythm of his breathing, calm and controlled. "Stay with me," he said close to her ear. "Talk to me. Tell me about your land." Deanna tried to focus on his words rather than the pain. 200 acres, she said. Good water from the creek. My father cleared the first 50 acres himself, built the house and barn. We ran cattle, some horses. It was supposed to be enough for a family. It is good land, Zachary agreed. I saw it when I was tracking those men. You have been working it alone. Since last winter, Deanna said. The horse stumbled slightly and she gasped. Zachary's arm tightened around her, holding her secure. I am sorry, he said. About your father, I heard in town that Samuel Thorne had passed. People spoke well of him. You knew him? Deanna asked, surprised. Knew of him, Zachary corrected. I am new to this area myself, only been in Boise about 6 months. But your father had a reputation as an honest man, a hard worker. That means something out here. Deanna felt herself slipping again, the world going gray at the edges. Zachary must have felt her body going slack because he shifted his hold on her, pulling her more firmly against him. Deanna, he said, his voice sharp. Deanna Thorne, stay awake. Tell me more. Tell me about the ranch. She forced her eyes open. How do you know my name? I asked about the property, he said. When I was tracking those men, I wanted to know whose land they were targeting. Now talk to me. What do you run on your land? 40 head of cattle, Deanna said, focusing on each word. A dozen horses. Good bloodlines in the horses. My father had an eye for horseflesh. I have been trying to build up the herd, sell some of the young stock. That is good, Zachary said. Smart business. The army is always looking for good horses, so are the stage lines. Keep talking. Why are you out here? Deanna asked. If you have been in Boise 6 months, what are you doing on my land? I am a territorial marshal, Zachary said. Or I was, until a few months ago. Now I work as a range detective, tracking down cattle thieves and men who prey on homesteaders. Someone in town sent word that there was trouble brewing out in your direction, so I came to investigate. Diana's head lolled against his shoulder, and she could smell leather and sweat and something else, something clean like sage after rain. You saved my life, she said softly. Not yet, Zachary replied, but I intend to. We are about halfway to town. You need to hold on a little longer. The ride seemed to last forever. Deanna drifted in and out of consciousness, aware only of the steady pressure of Zachary's hand over hers on the wound, the warmth of his body supporting her, and the rhythmic movement of the horse beneath them. Sometimes he talked to her, asking questions about the ranch, about her plans for the future. Sometimes he simply said her name over and over, pulling her back from the darkness that wanted to claim her. She heard herself answering, though later she would not remember what she said. She told him about her mother, whom she had never known but whose memory her father had kept alive through stories. She told him about learning to ride before she could walk, about helping her father with the cattle drives, about the first time she had broken a horse on her own. She told him about the loneliness of the past year, working the land alone, watching other families come and go, wondering if she was fool to try to hold onto this place by herself. You are not a fool, Zachary said firmly. You are brave, braver than most men I have known. Your father would be proud of you. Those words broke something inside her, and Deanna felt tears slide down her cheeks. She had not cried since her father died, had not allowed herself that luxury. There had been too much work to do, too many decisions to make, too many threats to face. But now, held in the arms of this stranger who had appeared out of nowhere to save her life, she could not hold back the grief any longer. I am here, Zachary said quietly. You are not alone anymore. I have got you. The lights of Boise came into view as the sun touched the horizon. Zachary urged his horse into a faster pace, and Deanna heard him calling out as they entered the main street. Doctor! I need a doctor! People came running. Deanna caught glimpses of faces, heard voices exclaiming in concern. Then she was being lifted down from the horse, carried again in Zachary's strong arms. She heard a woman's voice saying, "Bring her inside, quickly." And then she was being laid on something soft. "The bullet went clean through," Zachary was saying, "but she has lost a lot of blood. 3 men attacked her at her ranch, claimed her land belonged to someone else." "Deanna Thorne," another voice said, female, efficient. "I know her. She has been coming to town for supplies. Strong girl, she will make it through this." Deanna wanted to protest that she was not a girl, that she was a woman grown, but the words would not come. Hands were touching her shoulder, removing her shirt, and she felt a moment of embarrassment before the pain overwhelmed everything else. Someone put a cloth soaked in something sharp-smelling over her face, and the world went black. When she woke, it was dark outside. A lamp burned low on a table beside the bed where she lay, and she could see that she was in a small, neat room with whitewashed walls. Her shoulder was wrapped in clean bandages, and her arm was immobilized in a sling. The pain was still there, but duller now, more manageable. "You are awake," a woman's voice said, and Deanna turned her head to see a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and graying hair sitting in a chair beside the bed. "I am Dr. Sarah Winters. You are in my clinic. How do you feel?" "Like I have been shot," Deanna said, and was surprised to hear the doctor laugh. "Good," Dr. Winters said. "If you can make jokes, you are going to be fine. The bullet passed through the muscle in your shoulder. You lost a lot of blood, but thanks to that cowboy who brought you in, you survived. He kept pressure on the wound the whole way to town, probably saved your life." Deanna remembered the ride, Zachary's arm around her, his voice pulling her back from the darkness. "Where is he?" she asked. "The marshal." Dr. Winters smiled. "He has been here most of the evening. I finally convinced him to go get something to eat about an hour ago. He should be back soon. That man was beside himself with worry over you." "He is not a marshal anymore," Deanna said. "He told me he is a range detective now." "Is that what he is calling himself?" Dr. Winters shook her head. "Zachary Everett is one of the finest men I have known. He gave up his badge because he disagreed with some of the territorial governor's policies regarding the treatment of homesteaders. Said he could do more good working independently. He has been tracking the men who have been terrorizing small ranchers for months now." Before Deanna could respond, there was a knock at the door, and then Zachary himself walked in, carrying a tray with a bowl of soup and fresh bread. He stopped when he saw Deanna was awake, and something shifted in his expression, relief flooding his features. "You are awake," he said, echoing the doctor's words. "Thank God." Dr. Winters stood up. "I will leave you two to talk," she said. "Deanna, you need to stay here for at least 2 more days. That wound needs to be watched for infection. After that, you will need several weeks of rest before you can do any heavy work." "I cannot rest for weeks," Deanna protested. "I have cattle to tend, horses to train. There is too much work." "The work will wait," Zachary said firmly, setting the tray down on the table. "And if it cannot wait, I will help you with it. But you are not going back to that ranch alone, not with those men still out there." Dr. Winters nodded approvingly and left the room, closing the door quietly behind her. Deanna looked at Zachary, really seeing him for the first time in good light. He was tall, probably just over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and the lean, hard build of a man who spent his life in the saddle. His face was weathered but handsome, with strong features and those striking gray-green eyes that seemed to see right through her. He looked tired, she realized, as though he had not slept in days. "You should rest," she said. "You look exhausted." "I am fine," Zachary said, pulling the chair closer to the bed and sitting down. "How is your shoulder?" "It hurts," Deanna admitted. "But I will survive. Thank you for what you did. If you had not been there, those men would have killed me." "They tried," Zachary said, and there was steel in his voice. "And they will answer for it. I sent word to the territorial authorities, and I am going after them myself as soon as I know you are safe." "You do not owe me anything," Deanna said. "You already saved my life." "This is not about owing," Zachary replied. "This is about justice. Those men and the man who hired them have been terrorizing this whole valley. You are just the latest victim, but I intend to make sure you are the last." Deanna studied his face, seeing the determination there, the sense of purpose. "Why do you care so much?" she asked quietly. Zachary was silent for a long moment, his eyes distant. "I had a sister once," he finally said, 5 years younger than me. She and her husband homesteaded in Montana Territory, tried to make a life for themselves. Men came one night, claiming their land had been sold to someone else. They burned the cabin, ran off the livestock. My sister and her husband died in that fire." "I am so sorry," Deanna said, her chest tight with sympathy. "It was 3 years ago," Zachary said. "I tracked down the men who did it, brought them to justice, but it was too late for my sister. So now I do what I can to protect others, to make sure what happened to her does not happen to anyone else." Deanna reached out with her good hand and touched his arm. "You are a good man, Zachary Everett." He looked down at her hand on his arm, and when he met her eyes again, there was something in his gaze that made her breath catch. "You are remarkable," he said softly. "Standing there on your porch, facing down 3 armed men to defend your land. Most people would have run." "I had nowhere to run to," Deanna said. "That land is all I have left of my family. I would rather die defending it than lose it without a fight." "You will not lose it," Zachary promised. "And you will not die. I will make sure of both." Over the next 2 days, Zachary rarely left Deanna's side. He brought her meals, read to her from the local newspaper, and told her stories about his travels across the Western Territories. Deanna learned that he was 28 years old, originally from Missouri, and had been working in law enforcement since he was 20. He had served as a deputy marshal in Kansas, a sheriff in Colorado, and finally as a territorial marshal here in Idaho before striking out on his own. "I got tired of politics," he explained one afternoon as they sat together in the clinic's small garden, Deanna wrapped in a shawl against the autumn chill. "There are too many men in power who care more about money and influence than they do about justice. I wanted to be able to help people without having to worry about whose toes I was stepping on." "That sounds lonely," Deanna said. Zachary shrugged. "I have spent most of my life alone. After my parents died, it was just me and my sister. After she died, it was just me. I guess I got used to it." "I understand that," Deanna said. "After my mother died, it was just my father and me, and now it is just me. Sometimes the silence in that house is so loud I can barely stand it." They looked at each other, and Deanna felt something pass between them, a recognition of shared pain and shared strength. Zachary reached over and took her hand, his calloused palm warm against hers. "You do not have to be alone anymore," he said, "if you do not want to be." Deanna's heart beat faster. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I would like to help you with your ranch," Zachary said, "not just until you heal, but permanently. I am saying that I have not been able to stop thinking about you since I first saw you standing on that porch, brave and fierce and absolutely beautiful. I am saying that I know we have only known each other for 2 days, but I feel like I have been looking for you my whole life." Deanna stared at him, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "You cannot mean that," she whispered. "You barely know me." "I know that you are strong enough to work a ranch alone," Zachary said. "I know that you are brave enough to face down armed men to protect what is yours. I know that you honor your father's memory by refusing to give up on his dream. I know that when you smile, which you do not do often enough, it lights up your whole face. And I know that I would very much like the chance to get to know you better, if you will let me." Deanna felt tears prick her eyes. "I do not know what to say." "Say you will think about it," Zachary said. "Say you will give me a chance to prove that I mean what I say. I am not asking you to marry me tomorrow. I am just asking for a chance." "Yes," Deanna said, squeezing his hand. "Yes, I will think about it. I will give you a chance." Zachary smiled, a real smile that transformed his serious face into something warm and open. "That is all I ask." On the third day, Dr. Winters declared Deanna well enough to leave the clinic, though she warned her sternly about overdoing it. "Your shoulder needs time to heal properly," the doctor said. "No lifting anything heavy, no riding horses, no shooting rifles for at least 6 weeks. And someone needs to check that wound every day to make sure infection does not set in." "I will make sure she follows your orders," Zachary promised. They left the clinic together, Deanna leaning on Zachary's arm as they walked slowly through the streets of Boise. The town was bustling with activity, merchants calling out their wares, wagons rattling past, children playing in the dusty street. Several people stopped to greet Deanna and wish her well, and she realized with some surprise that she was known here, that people cared about what happened to her. "Where are we going?" she asked as Zachary led her toward the edge of town. "To get you home," he said. "I borrowed a wagon from the livery. You are not well enough to ride yet." The wagon was waiting for them, hitched to a sturdy pair of horses. Zachary helped Deanna up onto the seat, careful of her injured shoulder, and then climbed up beside her. As they left Boise behind and headed out into the valley, Deanna felt a mix of emotions. She was glad to be going home, but she was also nervous about what they might find when they got there. "What if those men came back?" she asked. "What if they burned my house, scattered my cattle?" "They did not," Zachary said. "I rode out there yesterday while you were sleeping. Your place is untouched. I brought your cattle closer to the barn where they will be easier to watch. And I am going to stay with you for a while if that is all right. I can sleep in the barn, help with the work while you heal." "You would do that?" Deanna asked. "I told you," Zachary said, glancing at her with those steady gray-green eyes. "You do not have to be alone anymore." When they arrived at the ranch, Deanna felt a wave of relief wash over her. The house stood exactly as she had left it, the barn doors closed against the weather, the corral fence intact. Zachary helped her down from the wagon and into the house, settling her in the big chair by the fireplace that had been her father's favorite spot. "You rest," he said. "I am going to tend to the horses and check on your stock." Deanna wanted to protest, wanted to do her share of the work, but exhaustion overtook her. The ride from town had tired her more than she wanted to admit. She closed her eyes, listening to the sound of Zachary moving around outside, and felt something unfamiliar settle in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize what it was. Hope. Over the next few weeks, a routine developed. Zachary slept in the barn as he had promised, but spent his days working the ranch. He mended fences, tended the cattle, worked with the horses. Deanna helped as much as she could with her arm in a sling, cooking meals and handling the lighter chores. In the evenings, they sat together on the porch as the sun set, talking about everything and nothing. Deanna learned more about Zachary's past, about his childhood in Missouri, about the war that had torn the country apart when he was just a boy. "My father fought for the Union," he told her one evening. "He came home different, haunted by what he had seen. He died when I was 16, just seemed to lose the will to live. My mother followed him within a year. I think her heart was broken." "That must have been hard," Deanna said softly. "It made me grow up fast." Zachary admitted. I had to take care of my sister, had to figure out how to survive. That is when I started working as a deputy, helping to keep order in our town. I found I was good at it, good at reading people, good at staying calm in dangerous situations. You were certainly calm when you found me, Deanna said. I was terrified, but you seemed to know exactly what to do. I was terrified too, Zachary confessed, but I could not let you see that. You needed someone to be strong for you. Deanna reached over and took his hand, marveling at how natural the gesture had become. You are always strong, she said. Not always, Zachary said, but I try. As the days passed, Deanna found herself thinking about Zachary constantly. She noticed the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the way his voice softened when he spoke to the horses, the way he always made sure she was comfortable before seeing to his own needs. She noticed how hard he worked, how he never complained even when he came in exhausted and covered in dust. She noticed how safe she felt with him near, how the loneliness that had been her constant companion for so long had disappeared. One afternoon, about a month after the shooting, Diana was in the kitchen making bread when she heard horses approaching. She felt a jolt of fear, remembering the last time unexpected visitors had come to her ranch, but Zachary appeared in the doorway before she could panic. "It is all right," he said. "It is the territorial marshal and his deputy. I sent for them. They have caught the men who shot you." Diana's hands stilled on the dough she had been kneading. "They caught them, all three of them," Zachary confirmed, "and they arrested Garrett Hutchins too. The man who was behind all of this. He is facing charges of fraud, attempted murder, and conspiracy. He will be going away for a long time." Deanna sat down heavily in a chair, relief making her legs weak. "It is really over. It is really over," Zachary said. "Your land is safe. You are safe." The marshal and his deputy stayed for coffee and gave Deanna more details about the case. Garrett Hutchins had been running a scheme for almost 2 years, forging documents to make it appear that he owned various homesteads and ranches throughout the valley, then sending hired guns to force the real owners off the land. He had successfully taken over a dozen properties before Zachary had started investigating. "You are the first person who fought back hard enough to make a difference," the marshal told Deanna. "Your refusal to be intimidated and Everett's determination to bring these men to justice is what finally broke the case open. The territory owes you both a debt of gratitude." After the lawman left, Deanna stood on her porch, looking out over her land. The autumn sun was warm on her face, and she could see her cattle grazing peacefully in the near pasture. Everything her father had worked for was secure. Everything he had dreamed of was safe. "What are you thinking?" Zachary asked, coming to stand beside her. "I am thinking that I could not have done this without you," Deanna said. "If you had not been there that day, if you had not cared enough to help me, I would have lost everything, maybe even my life." "You would have found a way," Zachary said. "You are the strongest woman I have ever met." Deanna turned to face him, her heart pounding. "I am thinking about what you said to me in the doctor's garden," she said. "About not wanting to be alone anymore, about wanting a chance." Zachary's expression grew intense. "What about it?" "I do not want to be alone anymore either," Deanna said. "These past weeks, having you here, working beside you, talking with you every evening, I have been happier than I have been in years. Maybe happier than I have ever been. I do not want that to end." "Deanna," Zachary said, his voice rough with emotion. He reached up and cupped her face gently with his hand. "Are you saying what I think you are saying?" "I am saying that I have fallen in love with you," Deanna said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I know it is fast. I know we have only known each other a few weeks, but I cannot help how I feel. You are everything I never knew I wanted. You are strong and kind and brave, and you make me feel safe in a way I have never felt before. I love you, Zachary Everett." Zachary's eyes shone with emotion. "Deanna Thorne," he said, "I have loved you from the moment I saw you on that porch, refusing to back down even in the face of death. I love your courage, your determination, your fierce loyalty to your father's memory. I love the way you talk to your horses, the way you stand with your face to the wind, the way you never give up no matter how hard things get. I love you with everything I am, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving it to you." He leaned down and kissed her then, gently at first, mindful of her still healing shoulder, and then more deeply as she responded. Deanna felt like she was flying, like she was falling, like she was coming home all at once. This was what she had been missing, what she had been searching for without even knowing it. This feeling of completeness, of rightness, of belonging to someone and having them belong to her. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Zachary rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said. "I know it is soon, but I am sure about this. I am sure about you. Marry me and let me help you build this ranch into everything your father dreamed it could be. Let me be your partner in every sense of the word." "Yes," Deanna said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, I will marry you. I want nothing more than to spend my life with you." They were married 3 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the little church in Boise. Dr. Sarah Winters stood as Deanna's witness, and the territorial marshal stood for Zachary. Deanna wore her mother's wedding dress, which she had found carefully preserved in a trunk in the attic, and Zachary wore a new suit that he had ordered special from San Francisco. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, and Zachary kissed her in front of the assembled townspeople, Deanna felt her heart swell with joy. They held a celebration at the ranch afterward, and it seemed like half the territory showed up. People brought food and gifts, and there was music and dancing that lasted well into the night. Deanna, still careful of her healing shoulder, danced with her new husband under the stars and felt like the luckiest woman alive. "Are you happy?" Zachary asked as they swayed together to a fiddle tune. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Deanna said. "This day, this moment it is everything I could have wanted and more." "Good," Zachary said, pulling her closer, "because I intend to spend every day for the rest of our lives making you even happier." That first winter as a married couple was hard but wonderful. The work of running a ranch did not stop just because they were newlyweds, and there were times when they fell into bed exhausted, too tired even to talk. But there were also quiet evenings by the fire, Zachary reading aloud while Deanna mended clothes or knitted. There were Sunday afternoons spent riding out to check on the cattle, working side by side in comfortable silence. There were nights when they made love slowly and tenderly, learning each other's bodies, discovering new ways to bring each other pleasure. Zachary proved to be everything Deanna could have wanted in a partner. He respected her knowledge of the land and the livestock, always asking her opinion before making decisions. He worked tirelessly, never complaining about the long hours or the hard labor, and he loved her with a fierce devotion that still sometimes took her breath away. "I keep thinking I am going to wake up and find this was all a dream," Deanna confessed one night as they lay together in the darkness. "That you are too good to be true." "I am very real," Zachary said, pulling her against him, "and I am not going anywhere. You are stuck with me, Deanna Everett." Deanna smiled at the sound of her new name. "I like being stuck with you." By the time spring arrived, bringing new life to the valley, Deanna had news of her own. She was pregnant, carrying their first child. Zachary was overjoyed when she told him, sweeping her up in his arms and spinning her around despite her laughing protests. "We are going to be parents," he said, wonder in his voice. "We are going to have a family." "Are you happy?" Deanna asked, though she could see the answer in his face. Happy does not even begin to cover it, Zachary said. You have given me everything I ever wanted, everything I thought I had lost when my sister died. You have given me a home, a purpose, a reason to wake up every morning with joy in my heart. And now you are giving me a child. I love you so much, Deanna, more than words can say. Deanna gave birth the following December, on a snowy afternoon with Dr. Winters in attendance, and Zachary pacing anxiously outside the bedroom door. When the doctor finally called him in to meet his son, Zachary wept openly as he held the tiny bundle. He is perfect, he said, touching the baby's soft cheek with one finger. What should we name him? I was thinking Samuel, Deanna said. After my father, if that is all right with you. Samuel Everett, Zachary said, testing the name. It is perfect. He would have been so proud, Deanna. Your father would have been so proud of you, of what you have built here. We built it together, Deanna corrected gently. You and me. This is our dream now, not just his. As little Samuel grew, the ranch prospered. Zachary's skills as a horseman proved invaluable, and they built up a reputation for breeding some of the finest horses in the territory. The cattle herd expanded too, and they hired help when they needed it, becoming one of the larger employers in the valley. But they never forgot where they came from, and they made it a point to help other homesteaders who were struggling, offering advice and assistance freely. Deanna often thought back to that afternoon when she had been shot, how close she had come to losing everything. It seemed like a lifetime ago now, like it had happened to a different person. That lonely, desperate woman standing on her porch with a rifle had been transformed into a wife, a mother, a successful rancher. And it was all because a stranger with steady hands and a kind heart had ridden up at just the right moment and refused to let her fall. What are you thinking about? Zachary asked one evening as they sat on the porch watching Samuel play in the yard. Their son was 3 years old now, sturdy and fearless, already showing signs of his father's love for horses. I am thinking about the day we met, Deanna said. About how different my life would be if you had not been there. I was there because I was supposed to be, Zachary said. I believe that. I believe some things are meant to be, that some people are meant to find each other. You were meant to survive that day. We were meant to build this life together. Do you ever miss it? Deanna asked. The life you had before, traveling, working alone, not being tied down to one place. Never, Zachary said firmly. That was not living, Deanna. That was just existing, moving from one place to another without any real purpose. This, what we have built here, this is living. This is home. 2 years later, Diana gave birth to twin daughters, Emma and Grace, and their house rang with laughter and the sound of children playing. Zachary proved to be a devoted father, patient and loving, always willing to drop whatever he was doing to play with his children or answer their endless questions. Deanna watched him with Samuel and the twins and fell in love with him all over again, seeing the gentle strength he brought to fatherhood. You are staring at me again, Zachary said one evening, catching her watching him as he helped Samuel with his reading lessons while the twins played at his feet. Can you blame me? Deanna asked. I have a very handsome husband who is also an excellent father. I consider myself very lucky. I am the lucky one, Zachary said. Every single day I wake up grateful for this life, for you, for our children. You saved me, Deanna. I did not even realize I needed saving until I met you. I think we saved each other, Deanna said. As the years passed, the Everett Ranch became one of the most respected operations in southern Idaho. They weathered droughts and harsh winters, dealt with rustlers and predators, faced down the challenges that came with making a life in the Western Territories. Through it all, Deanna and Zachary remained partners in every sense, their love growing deeper and stronger with each passing year. Samuel grew into a tall, serious young man who shared his father's way with horses and his mother's determination. The twins were as different as night and day, Emma quiet and thoughtful, Grace bold and adventurous. When Emma was 5 and Grace was urging her sister to climb higher in a tree, Deanna had a sudden vivid memory of herself at that age, and she smiled. "She reminds me of you," Zachary said, following her gaze to where Grace was scrambling up the branches. "And Emma reminds me of you," Deanna replied. "Always thinking things through, considering all the angles." "Together they make a good team," Zachary observed. "Like us." Deanna leaned against him, feeling the solid warmth of his body, the steady beating of his heart. "Like us," she agreed. When Deanna turned 40, Zachary organized a celebration that brought together friends and neighbors from across the valley. The house and yard were filled with people, food, music, and laughter. Samuel, now 17 and already taller than his father, played his fiddle while his sisters danced with their friends. Deanna stood with Zachary's arm around her waist and looked out at the crowd, at the life they had built, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. "Happy birthday," Zachary said, kissing her temple. "How does it feel to be 40? "It feels wonderful," Deanna said honestly. "I have everything I ever wanted and more than I ever dreamed possible. I have you, our children, this ranch, friends who are like family. What more could anyone ask for?" "What indeed," Zachary agreed. "Though I do have one more gift for you." He led her away from the party, down to the barn where they had first spent time together all those years ago. Inside, in one of the stalls, was a mare and a newborn foal, their coats gleaming in the lamplight. "She foaled this morning," Zachary said. "I have been watching her for weeks, waiting. This filly is from our best bloodlines and she is yours. I thought we could train her together, like we used to do before the children came along." Deanna felt tears prick her eyes. She remembered those early days on the ranch, working side by side with Zachary, the quiet satisfaction of training a young horse. "That sounds perfect," she said. They stood together watching the mare and foal, and Deanna thought about all the years that had brought them to this moment. The shooting that could have ended her life but instead had brought her the greatest love she had ever known. The struggles and triumphs they had faced together. The family they had created. The home they had built. "You ever think about that day?" she asked quietly. "The day you found me?" "Every day," Zachary said. "I think about how close I came to losing you before I even knew you. I think about how riding up that trail at that exact moment changed the course of my entire life. I think about how grateful I am that I was there, that I was able to help you." "You did more than help me," Deanna said. "You gave me a reason to keep fighting. You gave me hope when I had none left. You gave me love when I thought I would spend the rest of my life alone. You gave me everything, Zachary." "And you gave me the same," Zachary said, turning to face her fully. "Before I met you, I was just going through the motions, trying to do good work but without any real connection to anyone or anything. You gave me a home, a family, a purpose. You gave me a reason to put down roots and build something lasting. You gave me happiness I never thought I would find." They kissed there in the barn, surrounded by the gentle sounds of horses moving in their stalls, the sweet smell of hay and leather, and Deanna felt the same flutter in her heart that she had felt the first time Zachary had kissed her all those years ago. Some things, she thought, never changed. Some loves only grew deeper with time. The years continued to pass, bringing changes and challenges. Samuel married a rancher's daughter from the next valley over and started his own, spread with help from his parents. Emma studied to become a teacher and opened a school in Boise, serving the children of homesteaders and townspeople alike. Grace, true to her adventurous nature, became a skilled tracker and guide, leading hunting parties into the mountains and earning respect in a profession usually dominated by men. Through it all, Deanna and Zachary remained at the heart of the ranch, working together as they always had. Their hair turned gray, lines appeared on their faces, but their love remained as strong as ever. They still sat together on the porch every evening when weather allowed, watching the sun set over the mountains, talking about the day's work and making plans for tomorrow. One evening, when they were both in their 60s, Deanna turned to Zachary with a question that had been on her mind. "Do you have any regrets?" she asked. "About the life we built together, about leaving behind your work as a lawman?" Zachary was quiet for a moment, considering. "Not a single one," he finally said. "Oh, I am proud of the work I did, the people I helped. But this life, here with you, raising our children, building this ranch, this has been the greatest adventure of my life. Every decision I made that led me to you was the right decision. Every day I have spent with you has been a gift. Even the hard days," Deanna asked with a smile. "The days when the cattle broke through the fence or the well ran dry or the children were sick. Especially those days," Zachary said. "Because those were the days when I saw how strong we are together, how we can face anything as long as we have each other. Those were the days that proved our love is real and lasting." Deanna took his hand, feeling the calluses and scars that came from a lifetime of hard work, the strength that still remained even as they grew older. "I love you," she said. "I have loved you for 40 years, and I will love you for 40 more if we are blessed with them." "I love you too," Zachary said. "More than words can express. You are my heart, Deanna. You always have been from that very first day." They sat together as the stars came out, comfortable in the silence that comes from decades of companionship. Deanna thought about that terrified young woman who had faced down armed men alone, about the stranger who had ridden up at just the right moment to save her life. She thought about the journey they had traveled together, the family they had raised, the legacy they were leaving behind. The ranch would go on after they were gone, she knew. Samuel would take it over someday, and perhaps his children after him. The land that her father had cleared and claimed would remain in the family, a testament to his dreams and their hard work. But more than that, they had built something intangible, something that could not be measured in acres or head of cattle. They had built a love story that would be passed down through generations, a reminder that even in the hardest of times, even in the wildest of places, love could flourish and grow. As if reading her thoughts, Zachary squeezed her hand. "No regrets," he said again. "Not one." "No regrets," Deanna agreed, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Not one." The moon rose over the mountains, casting silver light across the valley. In the distance, they could hear coyotes calling to each other, and closer by, the gentle sound of horses moving in the pasture. The house behind them was quiet now, but it had been filled with laughter and love for so many years, and those memories lived in every room, in every piece of furniture, in every scratch on the wooden floors. Deanna closed her eyes, breathing in the scent of sage and pine on the evening breeze, feeling the warmth of Zachary beside her. This was home. This was family. This was love. And it had all started with a moment of violence that had brought together two lonely souls who had needed each other more than they knew. She thought about that desperate ride to town, Zachary's arm around her, his hand pressing down on her wound, his voice pulling her back from the darkness. She thought about waking up in the doctor's clinic to find him watching over her with worry in his eyes. She thought about falling in love slowly and surely, about building a life one day at a time, about creating something beautiful and lasting out of pain and fear. Years continued to pass in a gentle rhythm of seasons and celebrations. Grandchildren were born, filling the ranch with new energy and joy. Deanna and Zachary became the patriarch and matriarch of a growing family, their wisdom sought after, their stories told and retold around dinner tables and campfires. They watched with pride as Samuel expanded the horse breeding operation, as Emma's school flourished, as Grace's reputation as a guide spread throughout the territory. The territory became a state while they lived there, Idaho officially joining the Union in the summer that Deanna turned 54. They went to Boise for the celebration, along with Samuel and his wife and their 3 children. Standing in the crowded street, watching the flag being raised, Deanna felt Zachary's hand slip into hers. "Your father would have loved to see this," he said quietly. "He would have," Deanna agreed. "He believed in this land, in what it could become. I am glad we were able to help make his dreams come true." They continued working the ranch well into their 70s, though they gradually turned over more of the daily operations to Samuel and his family. Deanna still rose with the sun most mornings, still walked out to check on the horses, still found deep satisfaction in the rhythm of ranch life. And Zachary was always beside her, his step perhaps a little slower, his hair completely white now, but his eyes still holding that same steady strength that had first drawn her to him. On their 50th wedding anniversary, their children organized another celebration, this one even larger than the party for Diana's 40th birthday. People came from all over Idaho, some traveling for days to be there. Former neighbors who had moved away returned for the occasion. The territorial marshal who had arrested the men who shot Deanna, now retired and living in Boise, made the journey with his wife. Even Dr. Sarah Winters, now in her 90s, attended with the help of her grandson. Deanna wore a new dress in deep blue, and Zachary wore his suit from their wedding day, which somehow still fit after all these years. They stood together in front of the assembled crowd, and Samuel asked them to share the story of how they met. Deanna looked at Zachary, and he nodded, letting her tell it. She spoke about that afternoon when 3 men had come to her ranch claiming her land belonged to someone else, about standing on her porch with a rifle, about the bullet that had torn through her shoulder. She spoke about a stranger riding up with steady hands and determined eyes, about the desperate ride to town, about waking up to find that stranger watching over her. "He saved my life that day," Deanna said, her voice carrying clearly in the quiet that had fallen over the crowd. "But more than that, he gave me a reason to want to live. He showed me that I did not have to face the world alone, that partnership and love were possible even in the hardest of places. For 50 years, he has been my best friend, my partner, my greatest love. And I thank God every day that he rode up that trail at exactly the right moment." Zachary stepped forward then and took her hand. "And I thank God every day that I found a woman brave enough to stand up for what was hers," he said. "Strong enough to work a ranch alone, fierce enough to face down armed men, and gracious enough to let a wandering cowboy into her heart. Deanna has given me everything I ever wanted and more than I ever deserved. These 50 years have been the greatest privilege of my life." There was not a dry eye in the crowd as they kissed, this couple who had built a life together through determination and love. The party that followed lasted well into the night, with music and dancing and storytelling that carried on for hours. Late in the evening, Deanna and Zachary slipped away from the celebration and walked down to the creek that ran through their property. The moon was full, and they could see their reflections in the water, older now but still together, still hand in hand. 50 years, Deanna said wonderingly. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday that you rode up to my porch. Other times it feels like we have been together forever." "Both are true," Zachary said. "That is the magic of it, I think. Every day with you feels new and exciting, but at the same time, Being with you feels as natural as breathing. You are part of me, Deanna. You have been since that very first day. And you are part of me, Deanna said. The best part. They stood together by the creek, listening to the water flowing over rocks, the distant sound of music and laughter from the party, the call of a night bird in the trees. Deanna thought about all the years they had spent together, all the moments both big and small that had made up their life. The births of their children, the first time each child had ridden a horse alone, the pride of watching them grow into capable, compassionate adults. The hard years when drought threatened their livelihood, the triumphant years when their hard work paid off in abundance. The quiet evenings and the busy days, the laughter and the tears, the arguments and the reconciliations. Through it all, one constant had remained: their love for each other. It had been the foundation on which they had built everything else, the rock they had clung to in hard times, the joy that had made good times even better. It had been tested and proven over 5 decades, and it had only grown stronger with each passing year. "What do you think will happen to this place when we are gone?" Deanna asked quietly. "It will go on," Zachary said. "Samuel and his family will care for it and their children after them. But more importantly, the love we built here will go on. That is the real legacy, Deanna. Not the land or the cattle or the horses, but the proof that even in a hard place, even in difficult times, love can flourish and last. That is what we are leaving behind." "I like that," Deanna said. "I like knowing that our story will continue even when we cannot." They walked back to the party hand in hand, and Deanna felt a deep sense of peace settle over her. Whatever time they had left, whether it was another year or another 20, she would spend it grateful for every moment with this man who had ridden into her life at just the right moment and had never left her side since. The years that followed were gentle ones. Deanna and Zachary fully retired from active ranch work, though they still walked the property every day that weather allowed, checking on things with the keen eyes of people who had spent a lifetime working the land. They spent their mornings together on the porch with coffee, their afternoons reading or visiting with grandchildren, their evenings watching the sunset and talking about the day. Diana's shoulder, which had ached for years, especially in cold weather, finally stopped bothering her so much. "I think after all this time it has finally forgiven me for getting shot," she joked to Zachary one morning. "It took its time," Zachary replied with a smile. "But then again, we have plenty of that now." When Deanna was 78 and Zachary was 82, he fell ill with pneumonia during a particularly harsh winter. Deanna sat by his bedside day and night, just as he had once sat by hers in Dr. Winter's clinic all those years ago. She held his hand and told him stories about their life together, about the children and grandchildren, about all the good years they had shared. "I am not ready to lose you," she whispered one night when his breathing was labored and the doctor looked grave. "You will never lose me," Zachary said, his voice weak but certain. "I will always be with you, Deanna, always." But Zachary was stronger than the illness. He fought his way back to health with the same determination he had brought to everything else in his life. And by the time spring came, he was back on his feet, thinner and more fragile perhaps, but alive. Deanna had never been more grateful for anything in her life. "You scared me," she told him when he was well enough to sit on the porch again. "I scared myself," Zachary admitted. "But I was not ready to leave you yet. We still have more sunsets to watch together." They celebrated their 60th anniversary quietly, with just their children, grandchildren, and a few close friends. It was a far smaller gathering than their 50th had been, but no less meaningful. Deanna looked around at her family, at the faces of children and grandchildren who carried pieces of both her and Zachary in their features and their characters, and felt overwhelmed with love. "We did good," Zachary said softly, following her gaze. "We did very good," Deanna agreed. When Deanna was 83, she began having trouble with her heart. The doctor said it was simply wearing out after a long, hard life, and there was nothing to be done but rest and take things easy. Deanna found this frustrating, as she had never been good at sitting still, but Zachary was patient with her, entertaining her with stories and reading to her for hours at a time. "I always knew my heart was the problem," Deanna joked weakly one afternoon. "It was too full of love for you. No wonder it is tired." "Then we match," Zachary said, kissing her forehead, "because my heart has been too full of love for you since the day we met." One warm summer evening, when Deanna was 85 and Zachary was 89, they sat together on their porch as they had done thousands of times before. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink and purple. Their children and grandchildren were inside preparing dinner, and they could hear laughter and conversation drifting through the open windows. "You remember the first time we sat here together?" Deanna asked. "Like it was yesterday," Zachary said. "You were recovering from being shot, and I had just convinced you to give me a chance to prove I was worth keeping around." "Best decision I ever made," Deanna said. "Saying yes to you. Best decision I ever made was riding up that trail," Zachary replied. "Though I suppose it was not really a decision. I was following those men, doing my job. But choosing to stay, choosing to love you, choosing to build this life, those were decisions, and I would make them all again in a heartbeat." Deanna leaned against him, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breathing, the warmth of his body beside hers. They had grown old together, their bodies wearing out after decades of hard work and full living. But their love had not worn out. If anything, it had grown richer and deeper, polished smooth by time and trials into something precious and unbreakable. "I love you," she said. "I will love you forever, Zachary Everett, in this life and whatever comes after." "And I love you," Zachary said. "Forever and always, Deanna Everett. You are my heart, my home, my everything." They sat together as the stars came out, watching the night fall over the valley they had called home for more than 60 years. And when Samuel came out to call them in for dinner, he found them sitting peacefully side by side, hands clasped, faces turned toward each other in a final kiss. They had slipped away together, as they had done everything else in their lives, their hearts giving out at the same moment, their love carrying them forward into whatever lay beyond. The family grieved, but they also celebrated, knowing that Deanna and Zachary had lived full, rich lives and had died exactly as they would have wanted, together until the very end. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, under a stand of pine trees that had been saplings when Deanna's father first claimed the land. The ranch continued under Samuel's capable management, and then under his children, and then their children after that. The story of Deanna and Zachary became family legend, told and retold to each new generation. The story of a brave woman who defended her land, and a determined cowboy who rode her to town while applying pressure to her wound, and how that desperate ride had been the beginning of a love that lasted a lifetime. And on summer evenings, when the sun set behind the mountains and the valley filled with golden light, those who knew the story said you could still see two figures sitting on the porch of the old house, hands clasped, watching the sunset together. Some called it imagination, others called it ghosts. But the family knew the truth. It was love, pure and simple. The kind of love that transcended death, that echoed through generations, that proved beyond any doubt that even in the wildest of places, even in the hardest of times, love could flourish and endure forever. The legacy they left behind was not measured in acres or cattle or gold, but in the love they had shared, the family they had raised, and the proof that two people, brought together by violence and chance, could build something beautiful and lasting that would echo through the generations long after they were gone.